they are firmly managing to find their way around, and that they're starting to enjoy and engage. And I really hope that that's going to continue, and that after this session we can all meet in the booths that are open and also in the lounge, because I know that there's so much chat that we need to do to kind of offload all the stuff that we've learned today. I'm actually now tomorrow is an exceptionally busy day, full of lots of amazing presentations, and I really urge you just to plan your day tomorrow. Get here early, and just ask questions, meet with people, suggest you meet with people, and spend time on the booths and in the lounge, and also with the amazing speakers. You do know that if you go into the VIP area, you can actually engage with them one-on-one and send them messages. So this is definitely somebody who you're going to want to engage with afterwards. I met Justin at another event and was very, very impressed by his presentation. Totally different topic. Seems this gentleman can talk about anything knowledgeably and with experience. And I think it's quite rare that people have got theory and they've got practical experience. And certainly Justin is one of these people. So I'm not going to waffle on. He can give you a little bit of an outline on who he is and what he is passionate about from a supply chain perspective, because honestly, it really is everything. And today we were lucky enough that he's going to talk to us about this thing that everybody, I think, has referenced, which is blockchain. And please engage and ask questions. You know your way around the discuss tool now. So, Justin, if you want to, I'm going to pop you on as the main screen, unmute yourself, and take it away.
All right. Thanks a lot for that. I'm going to present my screen. Let's see here. Share audio, I'm guessing.
Yep, don't forget to click that little box.
And you can see my screen, correct?
Not yet.
All right, it says present. Okay, here we go.
There you go.
Perfect.
Here we go.
All right, so you can see my presentation?
We can, perfectly.
Perfect. Thank you. So thank you, everyone. My name is Justin Goldston. I hope that you have had an amazing knowledge-filled session today. And I ask that you just hang out for another 35 to 40 minutes, as I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes having a short course in how we can leverage blockchain for sustainable supply chains. So now that we have different definitions when it comes to sustainability, I want to play a game. Now, typically, whenever I deliver presentations, whenever I have lectures within the university at Penn State, I normally, regardless of the topic, I normally ask the people within the conferences, I normally ask my students, on this particular topic, think of 2 of the UN Sustainability Development Goals that you think this is going to impact. So as we're talking about blockchain within sustainability, as we're going through the presentation, I have not done this before. I have not done this with this presentation. This could be an absolute train wreck. But as we go through the presentation, as I'm going through the topics and I'm going through the use cases, just think about and just mark off all of the sustainability development goals that we've discussed or that were addressed. And then at the end of this presentation, after we go into our sessions, our breakout sessions, we'll discuss which ones I missed. Okay, so just a little bit about me quickly. I am a professor of project and supply chain management at Penn State University. I also am a research faculty affiliate for the Center for the Business of Sustainability within the Smill College of Business. I also do quite a bit of work for the Sustainability Institute at Penn State University. I also work with SESME, which is a government-funded program within the United States. I'm going to talk a little bit more about SESME later on within this presentation. But I am also a board member on the International Standards Board for the International Supply Chain Education Alliance, and we are currently developing a sustainable supply chain course. So if you are interested in that, please reach out to me on LinkedIn for more information on that. So as we get into our discussion, I don't have presentation. I've said if you've been on a previous presentation, I always say I don't give presentations. I have discussions, right? So in this discussion, we're going to begin with the research of sustainability from an environmental perspective, from a circularity perspective, from a recycling perspective. So depending on the survey or study, these numbers, I looked at a number of different studies for this presentation, and most of those studies are aligned with the statistics. I normally rely on university researched studies. So the first bullet is a study that was performed by Columbia. And Columbia found within the United States, I will preface that, within the United States, only 66% of paper is recycled, only 27% of glass is recycled, and only 8% of plastics were recycled. Now, I would think on the surface, I would think that number is higher, but that was a study by Columbia, and also a study that was performed by Yale, which was even more alarming, is that Yale researched the 367 material recovery facilities within the United States, and they found that only 14% of those 367 facilities could recycle plastic clamshells. So the plastic clamshells are the plastic to-go boxes, the plastic egg crates and things like that. Only 11% could recycle plastic cups, 4% plastic bags, 1% plastic plates. Now, of the remaining percentage of the remaining products that were sent to those recovery facilities, they were sent to the landfills or they were burned. So again, I rely on university-based studies in that there is no bias, in my opinion. There is no bias in those studies, in that if we looked at a federal study, if we looked at a state study, the people who are actually funding these facilities, these numbers may be somewhat inflated. So because the consumers would want to see that their tax dollars are well spent. So that's my justification. That's my reasoning as to why I went to the university-based studies. So that's the research. In terms of sustainability from a recycling, from a circularity perspective, but from an industry perspective. So Von Chenard, the founder of Patagonia, Von Chenard is a pioneer of sustainability. Von Chenard is very candid in his statements. I would say he's more candid than I am, and that is very difficult to achieve. Now, Von Chenard has said that greenwashing within the apparel industry is widespread, but I think that goes outside of the apparel industry, and I feel, in my opinion, based on the research, that greenwashing goes throughout business itself. Okay, so that is the purpose for this discussion in terms of how can we reduce, if not eliminate. We're not going to eliminate it. How are we going to reduce greenwashing within business? So I think that so there's additional studies that were performed by Cone Communication and Forbes, and in one of those studies, Cone Communications found that 81% of consumers say that they would take sacrifices to address social or environmental issues. In another study by separate study by Cone Communications, they said that they found that 86% of U.S. consumers expect, those small, medium, and large enterprises to act on social and environmental issues. Now, in a Forbes article, Forbes noted that 66% of consumers and 73% of millennials, are willing to pay more for a product sold by a quote, I put that in quotes, by a sustainable brand. Now, I bolded that word, the word spend more, because whenever consumers see that term spend more, they see dollar signs. And I think that these organizations see an opportunity in these study results, in that, yes, they're going to spend more if we throw a sustainable tag on our products. And we have seen that some organizations have been caught for greenwashing for that. Some organizations have had to pay fines for that. So in extension to that, the study by Cone Communications and that article by Forbes, there was a study that was led by Alexis Bateman, who is the director of sustainable supply chains for the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics. And in one of her findings, she found that 40 out of 1,128 survey respondents, that 46% felt that they were pressured by consumers, by stakeholders, by shareholders to adopt sustainable practices. So if organizations are pressured to adopt sustainable practices, what are they going to revert to? Because now I asked what are they going to revert to, because sustainability is not a 3-month implementation. It's not a 6-month implementation. So it's a long-term endeavor. It's a long-term engagement for these organizations. And that's one thing that I explain to leaders of organizations. That's one thing that I explain to students within the university at Penn State, where business schools teach leaders to think short-term, to think quarterly, to think annually, where developing a sustainable program is not a quarterly endeavor, a quarterly effort. So if I'm forced to adopt a sustainable practice, then I'm going to be forced to report. I'm going to be forced to show that I am indeed acting sustainably. Now, I say that these sustainability reports may be a contributing factor, because these sustainability reports are only frameworks. They are not required to be audited by a third party. So I feel that yes, there's a lot of companies out there doing some amazing things, but there are other companies that feel pressured. And because their competitors are publishing these sustainability reports, then they feel obligated to publish these sustainability reports. So because there is no validation to these sustainability reports, I think that we have to find a way to track and validate these sustainability practices, these sustainable practices for these organizations. Now, what is that proposed solution? In my opinion, one of those, this is not an end all be all. I would just say one of those solutions could be blockchain. Right now, you all have, I know a number of you have heard, if not all of you have heard of blockchain, but we are now going to go into our lecture. So we're going to start with the 50,000 foot view with the general definition of blockchain. Then we're going to go down into the business application, the industry application of blockchain. And then we're finally going to wrap up with how is blockchain going to positively contribute to circular supply chains? How is it going to positively contribute to a circular economy? Okay. So when we talk about blockchain at the highest level, you probably have heard of the term a distributed ledger. So whenever we say distributed ledger, just think of decentralized nodes. So I have decentralized nodes. Decentralized nodes will equal computers, so that would equal individuals within a blockchain network. And the larger the blockchain becomes, the more secure it becomes. Okay. Now, the blockchain is also, so whenever a record is written to the blockchain, everyone within that distributed, decentralized network sees that transaction. Now, because the blockchain is consensus based, we have all of those nodes have to review that transaction and say, yep, that's good. 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 Yep, that's a good. And then once we reach consensus, now that record is written to the blockchain. Okay. So now that all of those nodes have that record written to the blockchain, we say that the blockchain is immutable because if someone tries to change that record, that person has to change that record on every single node within that blockchain network. And that is virtually impossible. Okay. Now, I would say it's virtually impossible, but if you had a blockchain network of 2 or 3 nodes, 2 or 3 people, yeah, you could do it. But that would not be a good use case for adopting blockchain. So we talk about adopting blockchain within supply chain networks, which we will touch on shortly. So we would include all of our business partners within our blockchain network, and that way, all of our business partners sees those transactions. All of those transactions are transparent. All of those transactions are auditable. All of those transactions can reach consensus to say, yes, this transaction is indeed accurate. Okay, so that's blockchain at a high level. And the power of blockchain is that it's transparent, it's immutable, and the larger it becomes, the more secure it becomes. So from a business perspective within the industry itself, there are a number of blockchain offerings that have been developed. I know a number of people know of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not, you will not see an organization built on the Bitcoin blockchain. Okay. You will see some organizations that use the Ethereum blockchain. But the most popular blockchain within supply chain organizations is the Hyperledger Fabric. Hyperledger Fabric was developed by IBM. It is an open source offering, and the value that Hyperledger Fabric brings is that it's built primarily on smart contracts. So if we start on the left hand side, we have permissioned users. So Bitcoin is a permissionless blockchain. Permissionless blockchain means that anyone can access or view that blockchain. With a permissioned blockchain, then only individuals within your supply chain network or anyone you give access to, you grant access to that blockchain, can view the transactions within that blockchain. So I have permissioned users within my blockchain network, my supply chain blockchain network, and I can create smart contracts. So smart contracts are self-executing contracts that execute based on predetermined, agreed upon actions or activities. And once that smart contract is initiated, then we go to this blockchain network. Again, that validating entity is where I reach consensus. Yes, this is accurate. Yes, this is accurate. Yes, this is accurate. Once I reach consensus, then that transaction is written to the blockchain. So again, that is a permission blockchain. The Hyperledger Fabric is one of those frameworks that's used often within the industry, within the supply chain industry. So going down even deeper, be kicking off with our discussion today. We could actually implement blockchain within circular supply chains. So there's an issue within the industry where only 5% of the cost of a cup of coffee that you buy from Starbucks gets back to the farmer. Okay. Now, if we were to initiate blockchain within, so let's just say hypothetically, let's just say that Starbucks, creates a blockchain. They could create smart contracts that are initiated with the farmer, right? So once the farmer grows the beans, then that contract can get initiated at right then and there. Once the farmer sends out those coffee beans. Now, we could also incentivize the farmer, right? You could also profit share with the farmer, and you could create a smart contract with that way. So the blockchain, these smart contracts, these transactions can be initiated every single time the ownership or node changes within that particular product. Okay. So again, that's the power of the blockchain. So again, starting with a coffee grower. The coffee grower could put in the particular lot number that's associated with those coffee beans. Once it goes to the distribution center, that's a transaction that's written to the blockchain. Once the distribution center ships out those beans to Starbucks or a retail outlet, that transaction is written on a blockchain. If a retail store joins the blockchain, once you, the consumer, purchases that product, that transaction is written on the blockchain. Now, this is very powerful in the event that there's a recall, because I can create a blockchain network, and because I'm a part of the blockchain, if there's a recall, I can have a blockchain application on my phone where I can receive an alert, because that transaction is linked to me. That transaction is in my block. I'm a part of that blockchain. So if there's a recall, I could immediately receive a notification if there's a recall on a bag of coffee I just purchased. So that's the power of the blockchain. It creates that transparency, it creates that visibility, and it creates that audit trail. And it can also save lives. So that's where the blockchain is applicable from a supply chain perspective. Now, going outside of the Starbucks example, because that was hypothetical. Some of the use cases that are actually being implemented within the industry in terms of blockchain is that IBM and Maersk have partnered on a project, have collaborated on a project called TradeLens. So TradeLens is a solution within the maritime industry. And TradeLens is essentially a digital shipping platform that increases the transparency using blockchain. So going back to Hyperledger Fabric, TradeLens is built on Hyperledger Fabric. Okay. And one of my favorite use cases for blockchain within the supply chain industry is the IBM and Walmart example. I've used that example on all five of my TEDx talks that I did last year on blockchain. And so Walmart collaborated with IBM to track mangoes. And what would normally take them 6.5 days took them 2.2 seconds to recall a batch of mangoes. So, it increases that transparency, and it goes back to that Starbucks example. You'll be able to track down a lot number in the event of a recall in seconds. Two use cases that I'm personally working with. There's this organization called Zeus Logics. So Zeus Logics is a provider within the maritime industry where they are putting e-bills of lading on the blockchain to increase that transparency within the maritime industry. An industry that has been seen as a laggard when it comes to emerging technologies. Zeus Logics is one of those organizations that's bringing that transparency to a industry that has been lacking in technology in some cases. And finally, one of my favorites, Newterra. So Newterra is in the fashion industry, and I've been working with Newterra to track and trace the source goods, put them on a blockchain, and make them transparent to consumers. So Newterra is exciting in that we're looking to create a permissioned blockchain. So for the consumer or for the business partners within the blockchain network, where they can track and trace information. And then we also have a permissionless blockchain. So that Starbucks example, a permissionless blockchain where anyone can view and get insight into the source of the cotton, for example, in a short shirt that they have on their back based on the lot number or based on some kind of identifier on that article of clothing. So that's one thing that's very exciting, and I think that's going to provide a lot of visibility for consumers, because I think that the more millennials are becoming aware or raising awareness of sustainability, they're going to want this. They're going to want this transparency. They're going to want this insight. They're going to want to see the source of where their goods come from, down to the cotton, down to the buttons. So this demand is coming within the supply chain industry, and blockchain is one of those offerings to provide that. So again, there are a number of different use cases that are currently being developed within the supply chain industry as it pertains to blockchain. But I think that in order for us to make a positive impact, in order for us to make a contribution to address these sustainability development goals, we have to think outside of the block. We have to look to leverage emerging technologies to achieve our goal. Again, going back to my presentations, going back to my lectures, I always ask students to say, pick your top two SDGs. Okay. And just to give you some insight into my thought process, whenever I think of my top two sustainability development goals, I think of education, and I think of innovation and technology and infrastructure. I say education, because if I educate my students, if I educate people at these conferences, if I educate you all on how to leverage blockchain to address sustainability development goals, now I can leverage technology to address the rest of these SDGs. So I think that again, going back to my ask initially, think about what SDGs are important to you, and think about how you can use blockchain, or not even blockchain, but any emerging technology to address those sustainability development goals. Okay. So as we think outside of the block, as we think about how we can use blockchain to make a positive impact on sustainability, there's an interesting concept. It's an older concept, but it's an interesting concept, referred to as cradle to cradle. Some people can say this is where the circular economy was born. People can say that that's where circular supply chains were born. But Cradle to Cradle was a book that was written by McDonald and Brongart. And the goal, and let me just take a break here. If you see people that excited about sustainability, you have to be on board. Now, that's why I love this picture. That's why I had to get this picture. That's why I had to put this picture up there. But when you talk about whenever they were talking about Cradle to Cradle, they were essentially referring to design thinking. They were thinking about design for disassembly. And whenever you think about the design for disassembly, they were thinking about how can we use all materials that go into a product and continue a cycle. So how are we going to, and they actually did this design for disassembly for Herman Miller and Steelcase. And they were designing this furniture, designing these chairs, and they were thinking, okay, we're actually changing the face of supply chains. We're changing the face of circularity in that now the customer is a business partner. Now the customer has our inventory. So Steelcase and Herman Miller are saying our customers have our inventory in their homes. They're holding our raw materials. Because whenever they no longer want that chair, they're going to return that chair back to Steelcase. They're going to return that chair back to Herman Miller. Now, in my opinion, that's a perfect use case for blockchain. In that I can have the raw materials on the blockchain. I have that written to the blockchain where Herman Miller and Steelcase manufactured that chair. Now that record where that particular lot number got sent to that Herman Miller store or Steelcase store. Now, once that individual purchases that chair, now they have a key that's in a box where they get added to the blockchain. So now Herman Miller and Steelcase can log into their blockchain and see exactly where in the world that particular chair is at the consumer's home. If there is a change in ownership from consumer to consumer, now that consumer can transfer that key to another consumer. And now all this is tracked on the blockchain. And now this circularity is transparent. Now Steelcase and Herman Miller's inventory, I'm tracking my raw materials that's sitting in my house right now. That's an amazing use case. So also an interesting finding is that they're used to only use renewable energy, so only use solar energy. A lot of countries are depending upon solar energy, and they are realizing the benefits. Now, another thing I want to mention is that although organizations are implementing sustainable practices, very few are tracking the return on investment. So I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but one of my calls to action is to start tracking your return on investment for your sustainable practices. Because if you are tracking that return on investment, if you're publishing that return on investment, now not only do you get buy-in internally, but you get buy-in externally. Okay. So I didn't want to say that before I forgot. Sorry. So another important thing that McDonald and Brongart mentioned was celebrate diversity. So diversity in individuals within the organization, diversity in suppliers. I know a number of us talk about diversity and inclusion within organizations. A lot of individuals are going to talk about diversity and inclusion in this conference this week. But diversity and inclusion will lead to a competitive advantage because it leads to innovation. So that's one thing that they talk about in Cradle to Cradle, and that's another thing I talk about in their in their Cradle to Cradle 2.0, the upcycle. So the upcycle is where they have that design for disassembly mindset, and they kind of take it a step further. Where they say they're going to go beyond sustainability, which I found was very, very interesting. So I did a lot of research on Cradle to Cradle, and because of their philosophies, because they noted that, so they developed 5 criteria for a certification, and they noted that if you address these 5 criteria, you address all 17 SDGs. So that's what got my attention. Not only do you address all 17 SDGs, but this certification is audited by a third party. This is what I've been saying. This is what I've been saying. This has been a gap. Yes, the big consulting firms provide consulting services for sustainability, but my focus is small and medium manufacturers and distributors. My focus is small and medium organizations. So those small and medium organizations aren't able to afford the Deloittes. They're able to afford the other organizations. So this Cradle to Cradle certification is one option that even small and medium enterprises can participate in, and they can be certified. They can understand where they currently stand, in terms of their sustainable practices. So this is one thing that was very important to me. This is one thing that struck a chord with me. So this is one step. This is one step in moving toward transparent, auditable sustainability within organizations. And again, if you are to address those 5, then you will be addressing all 17 SDGs. So another step in the direction to address sustainable supply chains is to democratize technology. Now, if the U.S. can democratize technology, a number of other countries can democratize technology. So I work for SESME. So SESME stands for the Clean Energy Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute. And it is an institute that's funded by the Department of Energy. And what we're doing there is we are partnering with organizations. And the organizations it's a cost share initiative, where if the organizations put up, so they currently have a proposal out now, or you can submit a proposal now to SESME, where if you're able to contribute up to $100,000 to a technology solution that will positively impact sustainable practices, that will positively impact energy efficiency, then SESME and the Department of Energy will match that $100,000. So that's one thing that the government in the U.S. is doing to make a positive contribution to sustainability. But what's more important is that once these organizations develop these solutions, they go into this marketplace where organizations within the SESME network can access this technology. So There's small, medium, and large organizations a part of this Sesame network, and all of these organizations are contributing technological advancements, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning. There are a few blockchain solutions out there. So that's how small and medium enterprises can leverage blockchain within their supply chain networks, within their manufacturing organizations, to increase the transparency throughout their supply chain networks. So the goal of Sesame again is to democratize technology and make this technology, make these innovative solutions available for everyone. So I asked each of you to, think about how, you in your respective countries can democratize technology. Because I think, in my opinion, that's one of the first steps into creating sustainable supply chains. So to provide these advancements, to provide these technologies, to provide this transparency to everyone. So one thing I talked about in one of my TEDx talks was creating a sharing economy using blockchain. Now, when I was referring to the sharing economy in those TED talks, I was talking about, we could use Airbnb, and so there's B token. B token is somewhat like Airbnb but on the blockchain. We could use a solution such as Uber, so we could create that sharing economy and have Uber type solution to use blockchain. Now, with all of these different industries that are creating a sharing economy, why can't blockchain be on this screen here? And why can't we have a design? Why can't we have a solution to create a sharing supply chain? If we have a manufacturing organization and we have machinery that's not being used, why can't we create a blockchain network where we say we have this particular machine available? Someone within the area can use it, right? That's a sharing economy. And one thing that people, a lot of people argue with me is that, there's enough for everyone. We can create a sharing economy because I think that's the answer to a sustainable world. We have to create that sharing economy. We have to create those sharing supply chains. And I think that a solution such as blockchain can lead to that. So we have to think of ways to how do we create sharing circular supply chains, right? So there are some cities that have created repair houses. So repair houses, share houses, and things like that, where it's kind of like Craigslist, where you say, okay, I have this to share, or I'm going to be at this location, I'm repairing these things, this, and this. If we create a blockchain solution to have something like that, then you have that transparency, and you're creating, a sharing circular economy. So, in terms of the call to action, and looking back on what we discussed, you have to think about what's going to be your legacy. I've seen that. So one individual said that Thomas Jefferson was on Thomas Jefferson's tombstone. Thomas Jefferson has where, he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He wrote the Bill of Rights. He was a father of the University of Virginia. But the thing is, he did not include that he was a president of the United States twice. He was not concerned about his job, being known for his job. He was concerned about his legacy. So I'm not concerned about being a professor at Penn State. I'm concerned about what legacy am I going to leave behind for my daughter, in that how I made a positive impact on sustainability, how I made a positive impact on impacting people's lives that I'm never even going to meet. So I ask, if you look at these SDGs, we have to share these SDGs. As I said, I'm focused on quality education and I'm focused on industry and innovation. You know, someone has to take no poverty. Someone has to take zero hunger. Someone has to take good health and well-being. That way, all of these SDGs can be addressed. But I think that one of the primary tools to addressing all of these goals is technology. And one of those technologies is blockchain. Another one of those technologies, I feel, is artificial intelligence. So I think that it comes down to educating yourself, educating your workforce, educating your peers on what these technological solutions can deliver, and start developing, start building that legacy.
Professor Goldston, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
We've actually gone over our time by about 4 minutes.
I'm done.
Great. There were quite a few questions asked, but sadly there isn't time for questions at the moment. I don't know if you can move to the lobby. The people with questions might be able to contact you there directly.
Absolutely.
But in closing, great. Thanks very much, Professor. So thank you very much for getting up early in the morning and presenting here to SAPEX. And to the audience, I would just like to remind you, please click on the polls on the right-hand side of your screen and assign a mark to this presentation according to how you rated it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.